Hi, I'm Anna.
And I'm Angus, and welcome back to Talking Politics, guys. Our second ever episode. Now,
Where do we start?
yeah,
I mean, I'd like to say this week wasn't as bad as last week. I'd like to think I've ended this week a little bit more positive.
yeah, I think we have a couple of positive notes
Yeah.
to have, but as things go, it's probably going to be a majority negative. Just a little update: we are in a different room because the set, if you want to call it the set that we are usually in, is currently being taken up by more important matters. So we're currently in a different set. Anyway, where did you want to start?
I think let's start with my first little bit of good news, which
Cool.
I think is that anyone who's had three miscarriages in the UK now is now able to access treatment on the NHS and better support, which I think will benefit a lot of families out there, especially lots of families who are trying to conceive and aren't able to. It's tragic losing children, and I just think this is a really, really, really great opportunity to just kind of get things turned around a bit.
Yeah.
And also, it's going to better the image of the NHS, and I think that's really important. And I'm just really grateful that honestly, women are being able to access these opportunities more easily now. I might start with my little segment is that the council elections are coming up this Thursday. So if you're over 18, get out and vote.
Go out and vote, guys.
Get out and vote. It's definitely interesting. It's a mixed bag. I mean, some of the analysing I've done, because I've been talking to a few council candidates from various parties behind the scenes, and it's very mixed. I mean, I know areas of where I live where it's going to be I know where I live, it's a tie, kind of very, very close tie between Conservative and Reform at the moment. So it's going to be interesting to see. Right. But you have some areas, some wards actually in the UK, which are, between Reform and Green, or Conservative and Green, or Reform and Labour. So it's just very
very divisive right now, isn't it?
It is divisive.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing a time of certainly picking sides, and you can definitely see that. You can definitely see that across the country in terms of even within Parliament. Actually, Parliament definitely seems extremely divided and volatile right now. There doesn't seem to be any two parties that seem to be agreeing on anything right now. They seem to be vehemently disagreeing with each other just for the sake of it, for the basis of votes, because of how, the two-party system we've lived in for since the conception of our parliament is now up in the air. So I think we're definitely in unprecedented territory when it comes to the voting turnout within this country. Do you think the turnout will increase?
I think people are a bit too miserable at the moment. However, leading on from our segment last week, there has been one thing which has united British people alike, regardless of party, regardless of whether you support the king or not, and that the rest of the king's visit was a diplomatic honeymoon, basically.
Yeah.
I think that's the most unity we've seen across people in the UK for ages. I mean, I think it was quite impressive. I know anti-monarchy folk who were very, very impressed, and though they don't support the unelected head of state we have, they say that it's actually quite impressive what Charles pulled off. Actually,
yeah, I feel like he is one of the few people who can walk into Congress, and essentially he sort of gave Trump a very big verbal telling off without Trump even realizing it. I mean, he went into Congress having been known as quite a left-wing king anyway. He's known to be very left-wing in terms of climate, stuff like that. He walked in and he said a number of different things that were sort of attacking the way that America is seemingly to be run right now, in terms of Congress not being a very useful check and balance against the president, sort of in the way that he didn't even consult Congress when he attacked Iran. I think that's a very important thing that nobody seems to be talking about. It's the fact that Congress seems to be sort of a background check. It seems to just be there on paper now in the country. And I think Charles did very, very well, having been the first king to go back and address Congress in 250 years. I think it's immensely important the way that he talked about politics and the way that he talked about their relations and things. I think he's the only man who could walk in there and say what he said and walk out again, and there not be much damages. And he said it in a very, very clever way. Very clever.
I think you do have to. I think some of it resonates with Trump. I think Trump has a lot of respect for our king, and in some way, I guess that will kind of influence how he acts. And I think, I think he has his soft spot for the UK, considering his mother was Scottish. And I think some of it will have gone into Trump's head, but let's hope he works on it. We're all hoping Donald Trump can kind of work on it at the moment. Yeah, that's back to. Would you like to do your segment on US and Iran? Because
yeah, so we've got some little updates on the over the past week on the three main biggest conflicts around Europe and the Middle East, in Lebanon and Israel, Ukraine and Russia, and the US and Iran. And certainly from the research that I was doing and everything like that, the American and Iranian conflict is by far the most volatile currently. It's by far the most volatile. Literally 5 minutes before we started recording, I don't know if you saw this. Literally 5 minutes before we started recording, the Telegraph released or reported on a statement made by Trump on Truth Social, in which he quite literally said that he doesn't want to bomb Iran to oblivion, but if they were to attack any American ships, he will blow them off the face of the earth. Now, if that doesn't scream volatile, I don't know what does. Both of the blockades put down by the countries hasn't changed since last week when we last time that we recorded. But yeah, it's not great, is it? It's really not great.
No, I would just notice Hegseth on BBC saying the US is just getting started in the Strait of Hormuz. Whatever that means, I'm not sure I want to find out anymore. It's depressing, but there's not really much we can do about it. The best way we can hope is that, people are sensible about it. Diplomacy eventually does prevail, and both sides will see reason, which I think is what Europe, China, most of the world are kind of hoping for at the moment.
Yeah, both sides seem to be making very, very very aggressive statements. Iran has also said that they've not even begun in terms of their retaliation, and I feel like it's a very scary situation, very, very scary, because both countries have the capabilities to go for a long, long time, especially since Iran's getting support from countries that want wrongdoing towards the US. Russia, for example, they want to deplete the US's stockpile in terms of the world strength of country. And I think it's really, really scary. Both countries seem to be adopting this concept of brinksmanship and hoping that the other country backs down. But we certainly haven't seen anything like that from Trump. And the Iranian people are the ones who are getting attacked, so I'm not sure they're going to back down anytime soon. But it's scary. It's really, really scary. Russia and Ukraine continues to be sort of stagnant. There seems to be a big step towards a technological war. Something interesting I saw this week was actually Chernobyl. It was almost breached. The concrete.
I think it was breached earlier at the start of the war. Essentially, I just think the scariest thing about the Russia and Ukraine thing, I think actually hitting the energy infrastructure, especially Chernobyl, because Chernobyl can do a lot more damage than a nuke can in terms of long-term consequences. If you have a nuclear war, you're going to have all the bombs going off, and obviously, I don't want to say it so lightly. That's not great by any means, because a nuclear war,
it's not ideal, certainly
not ideal. But Chernobyl, there was the effects of that. There's still deaths predicted from the area today, and if anyone's watched the series, it's quite terrifying, the initial experience.
One of the best series I've ever watched, by the way.
I wouldn't recommend if you like us extremely gory. I think it's quite a quite a harsh one. But the Chernobyl being breached is scary, because Chernobyl will have consequences for all of Europe. Some of the radiation did hit the UK when it first happened afterwards. And I think the most countries affected were obviously around Ukraine, the area. but it has such widespread the consequences for Europe and for Russia actually. So I'd almost think if Russia tries to attack Chernobyl, it's kind of shooting itself in the foot because it has effects on it as well. And radiation poisoning isn't great.
Yeah, I mean, the radiation reaction certainly doesn't go anywhere, and it's probably going to rage on for another 100,000 years easily. But I mean, way back when it was first initially a problem, it was like a couple meters away from seeping into the soil, therefore getting into the water system, therefore literally being almost the extinction of humans due to food systems across the planet being affected by this radiation. So I think it's certainly quite scary. But that was, it was like you said, it was breached earlier in the conflict, and they sort of patched it up. But yeah, it's
less effective than it was, which is kind of terrifying. We could do a whole episode on Chernobyl, but we're not going to because we're not
going to.
We're not a history podcast.
A quick one on Lebanon and Israel. They had a ceasefire, but like most ceasefires right now within the Middle East, it's currently breaking down. Hezbollah has been very, very much crippled by this conflict, by Israel attacking the city. But yeah, they remain vigilant, and they remain a part of the system, and they very much remain in Lebanon. So that conflict also doesn't seem to be going anywhere. But anyway, from the bad news, I think we should do one more good news and then start talking about the UK in general.
What more good news? What is there at the moment?
I think I think good news for those younger people, those people similar to us. It's very much good news for us, and that is the new rental laws.
Oh yes.
Lots of different stuff to do with the rental laws. Very much in favour of those renting. One of them is that down payments cannot be more than the first month's worth of rent.
Yeah.
You have to give 2 months notice on a rise in rent per year, and it has to be once per year. People find it easier now to take their landlords to court.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit of a throwaway one, but pets being being allowed has now been introduced, and it's a lot harder for a landlord to be able to ban pets. Yeah, it's quite a lot of good actually for those young people, especially seeing as their housing ladder is in such a state as it is. I think it's a really good step forward.
I think it's a really good step forward for those renting. It makes them feel more secure, and I think obviously the security of people having a home. Obviously, in terms of, I saw an interesting article on the BBC actually, and it was about accidental landlords where people find themselves like moving out, having to take care, leaving the house, renting it out, and then it ends up for like people moving in not really paying the rent. So I guess for accidental landlords who haven't really voluntarily gotten themselves into this situation, landlords and private property kind of investment and stuff, it's going to be a bit of a hit for them because they don't really know what's going on. And if there's months of unpaid rent, then that's a problem. But I think for the vast majority, it stops a lot of people getting taken advantage of. And I love the pets thing. I just love the idea of like animals being allowed in the house. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's certainly a law that seems to have been taken advantage of quite a lot by landlords. But yeah, so anyway, so that's the rental laws. Okay, now I think we should have a snippet on climate. Now I had it in my notes last week, but I think we didn't have time to talk about it last week. But essentially, the Global Climate Organization has released a statement about the Atlantic sea currents. And basically, they are now more likely than not to topple and to fall apart. Now, to most of you, that won't mean anything, but essentially, it would mean that thermal currents under the sea would change. Therefore, migration patterns for the animals would change. Trade ships and the routes that they would change. And probably the biggest thing is that millions of tons of CO2 will be released from underneath the current. That has been stopped from coming up because of the current, and now if the current is to topple, all of this would be released into the atmosphere. Now, what does this mean? It basically means, well, global warming would increase in its rate by a huge amount, and no, we don't like that. And yeah, so climate change, extreme weather would become increasingly more apparent in society, especially in the case of the UK specifically. Cold, lots and lots of cold, in extreme heat too. So already we're seeing within the UK There being very, very hot summers. Are you ready for even more hot summers and hotter summers? Essentially, that's what it means.
That. I think the British people are ready. I think the British people are ready to like sunbathe.
I personally am not. I couldn't be less ready for that. I do not do well in the summer usually, and it would be hell on earth, literally, for me. Anyway, so that's climate. That's a quick thing on climate. It's just not great. Hopefully we can get
on the point of climate. I think your concerns about the climate are like correct, and I think I've been seeing a lot around aviation. I'm a massive aviation geek, off topic, but there has been an increase that like global turbulence on flights is increasing. And I think I noticed recently, I never used to get turbulence flying to and back from China. And recently it's just been like, you're flying I was kind of flying over the Mongolia area, and I kind of thought, I'm so scared of planes. It was literally hell. And I think it is due to, changing climate. And I think turbulence is like getting worse. And I think the aviation kind of, organizations are warning people. It's like I don't think it ever used to be like common on long haul flights for the seatbelt sign to pretty much stay on the whole time. And I noticed that this year going back, there was a lot more seatbelts on the whole time. But that's my digression and my little input on the climate thing.
Point is that the problem is here. It's not 40 years away. It's not the next generation's problem. It is here, and very much a problem of now and the future. So yes, God save the climate.
And also remember to put your seatbelts on the flights.
Yes, and keep your seatbelts on. Don't get up the seat unless you have to. Right. What do you want to talk about next?
I think so. For any of you who've been watching the news this week in the UK, there has been a terror incident involving the stabbing of 2 Jewish men in London. The threat level of terror in the UK has been raised to severe from this, and it's just. I think the thing with terror attacks is when it like hits so close to home in London. I mean, you kind of see most of the stuff going on abroad and stuff, and you think, oh, like that can't be like our country. And I think there are people who are angry because of hate, but there are also people angry. They're kind of like disappointed in our country.
Yeah. So there was a stabbing on April 29th that injured 2 Jewish men. There's been many different other examples. There was a man stopped by police from entering the Jewish embassy. He was trying to climb the fence of the Jewish embassy. He had like 4 knives up his clothes and in his socks and things. There was a synagogue, I think, in Manchester that was firebombed. I mean, earlier in the year, even before the threat level had become so big, I remember a story that someone had driven a car straight into a synagogue and had attempted to kill as many Jewish people as he could. Anti-Semitism in this country has become an extreme problem. And the government has said it's the biggest national emergency since COVID. So if that doesn't put it into perspective about how important this is, and I don't feel like there's much knowledge of it around, certainly people our age. People aren't aware of what's going on. There seems to be a real push towards anti-Semitism and hurting people that aren't even involved in the conflict, in the conflict in the Middle East. And you can disagree as much as you want in politics. You can hate other people's views, but tolerance is the basis of democracy. And in order for you to be able to feel correct in yourself, or that you should be able to feel correct in yourself, should be through tolerance. And I think any anger should be expressed politically and not aggressively. And I think, unfortunately, that's the way that our country is hurtling towards right now. I mean, you see it, as we touched upon earlier in the pod. We talked about Parliament being unable to agree on anything. I mean, just this week it was revealed. It didn't happen in this week, but it was revealed by Nigel Farage, possibly to do with sympathy votes for the elections. But Farage revealed that his house was firebombed in 2025. I mean, again, you can disagree as much as you want with someone, as much as you want, but violence in a political sense is never, ever the answer. Because all you do is A, you feed the opposition and you feed their narrative that your side of the argument is aggressive and they are just there to hurt you. And B, all you do is to stop the progression of politics in any way, shape or form. That's all you're doing. That nothing good comes from terrorism and aggressive and just violence in politics. So yeah, so that's essentially it. And also on the other side, you get Reform saying that they're going to put any illegal immigration detention. Thank you, producer Aidan. Any illegal immigration detention centres, they're going to put them in green voter areas, which it feels so divisive, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's so hard because they're kind of I guess the kind of thing that Reform is trying to do here is see, will the Green voters be happy having the immigration detention centres in their area? And some of the Greens voters have been like, oh, maybe not. And the Reform are using that to say, so you don't like having immigrants. It's complex. I think it is complex, and I think there'll be more after the elections. I think next week we'll have a bigger chunk of news than this week. This week, in terms of recent weeks, has been quite flat for news. It's been quite the same. It's definitely been a flat week. I would like to quickly digress on one note. A bit of positive news, not necessarily for us, but the Chinese government has now introduced laws that mean that companies can't go replacing workers with AI. It says AI can be used alongside better training for employees. You can't fire an employee just to replace them with AI. You need to train them with that AI, and that's going to be a requirement, and that's going to keep so many people in employment. And I really, really hope that that's introduced into the UK. Obviously, that doesn't change much for the graduate job market. Unfortunately, like entry-level jobs are still disappearing. But what I'm really hoping is that the UK, or like even the rest of the world, can kind of follow suit and kind of realize that, okay, let's not fire the workers who can't do anything, like because of AI, like the AI is doing their job for them, but let's train them to use that AI. Let's train them to work alongside that AI if that helps people keep their jobs. And I think there's something been done right there.
Do you think this should be a precedent set for the rest of the world? Do you think the rest of the world should implement the same policy?
I think over time, yes, because I think AI has whether you disagree or agree with AI, it's going to have an effect on our lives. And I guess what I like the route that China's taking here is that, you can't totally replace humanity with AI. And I do quite like that. And also, second little note, for those of you who are starting to book driving tests and stuff, there are some new driving rules coming in on the 12th of May, which means your instructor will no longer be able to book your test. And I think this was already implemented, but you can now only change your driving test twice and to the 3 nearest test centres, so you'll no longer be able to book them halfway across the country. Not necessarily politics related, but this is kind of...
No, but it's news relevant to those watching, to the youths.
To the youths, which I don't know whether that's positive news or not. I mean, it will clear the backlog, but I think...
Yeah, we'll see.
So, semi-positive news to end on this week.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching. Hopefully we'll see you next Monday. Now, apologies for not posting yesterday, but it was a bank holiday. And, us podcasters do need the holidays as well. Anyway, so hopefully we'll see you next week. Please like and subscribe. That'd be really, really helpful. It is a public account. Therefore, any sort of interaction from those of you who know us will be amazing in terms of gradual growth for us in the future for universities and anything like that. So please like and subscribe. And thank you. See you next week.
Bye.